to the Pownal Select Board regular meeting Thursday, July 23rd at 7 p.m. The agenda, approve the minutes of 7/6, 7/9, 7/15, warrants, old business, amend resolution for municipal planning grant, new position, town agent, board procedure and grants, Colleen Clark for the town office project. 5 is new business. Catherine Bears, I hope I'm saying that right, for the BCRC for the historical Bennington Williamstown Trolley line study. Approval of computer, camera, and microphone purchase for 8 workstations. Public comment will be available via Zoom. And I'd like to read this, please. The board may be taking actions in public session after the executive, which will be done via Zoom conference. The meeting will be muted during the executive session and unmuted when the board comes back out into public session. And we're going into executive session for contractual, legal matters, and personal issues. May I have a motion, please?
Motion to approve.
A second?
Just want to make an amendment that Pauline's at the ERB meeting, and so I'm not sure exactly what time she'll be arriving for our meeting to give us an update. So just want a little flexibility there, please.
Okay. So motion's on the table with the amendment. Bob?
Aye.
Jamie?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Ronnie?
Aye.
Angie, aye. Okay, the approval of minutes for 7/6. Second,
Second.
any discussion? None? Bob?
Aye.
Jamie?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Ronnie?
Aye.
Angie, aye. All right, for 7/9,
Motion to approve.
seconded,
Second.
any discussion? Bob?
Aye.
Jamie?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Ronnie?
Aye.
Angie, aye. Minutes of 7/15. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Bob?
Aye.
Jamie?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Ronnie?
Aye.
Angie, aye. Okay, warrants. Accounts payable warrant report 3 for 7/17 for $16,245.58. $5,260 is the Bennington Sheriff. Ripco is $4,005.60, and the IRS was $3,412.18. Report 4 for accounts payable for 7/24/2020 was for $136,618.32. Casella Waste was $4,990. Fisher and Fisher was for $7,609, and that was from February forward, so that's for 6 months. MVP Health, $5,711.34. Will Paving was $10,000, and that was for 3 roads.
Was 99 change, right?
Right. Oh, I said 10,000. I meant 100,000. I'm so sorry. I got my zero in the wrong spot. Okay. Payroll for 7/2 to 7/17 was for $9,558.22. Payroll ending 7/19 to 7/24. We have to amend PR 7/19 for $200. That needs to be corrected. The payroll is for $8,564.29 minus the 200, which will be fixed, will be $8,364.29. A motion?
Motion to approve.
A second?
I'll second.
Any discussion?
What was the blacktop expenditure was what, 199,000 and change?
No, it
No,
was
99.
99,900, and I rounded it up to 10,000.
Right, what was the bid? You know what the bid was that right on target? And I don't remember, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I don't know.
We-
It was for Pudding Stone and Burlington Road.
Right, I just wondered if it was on target from what, or if it was over, under, or right at where, or approximately. I mean, I don't want to hold anybody accountable, whether you say it was right on or not, but was it approximately where it was supposed to be?
Yes.
It was, okay. That's all, just curious.
You can verify if they put the numbers on it.
Right, I mean, we could verify, I just didn't know if it was, I couldn't remember the actual numbers.
And then Ripco was, the $4,500, $4,005.60. That was, for Stromeyer Road over.
Okay,
That's just for the material.
That's just for the material, yeah. So I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Yeah.
It's fine.
Okay. Any other discussion? Bob?
Aye.
I,
Mike?
aye,
Ronnie?
Aye.
Angie, aye. Okay. Old business. Amend resolution for municipal planning grant. Do I have a copy of that?
I don't have one in my packet.
Is that what we
the
signed?
proposed grant, is that what you're talking about?
that's the,
No, that's the municipal planning grant. I think we got it.
We
right.
did get it in the email.
Yeah,
Oh, it's on the table, actually, I know. One of the folders right there with, like. Yeah.
Was it?
It's yellow folder, she says. Okay. So do you want me to read it?
Sure.
You want me to read the whole thing? Or just,
What we're doing is, we're making the chairperson, the #1 position,
Mike, okay, gotcha.
and Mike the second. We're actually gonna do 2 of them. I don't know which one the state is going to take.
Okay,
I want it, because I don't wanna wait another 3 weeks, just in case.
all right.
I couldn't do
Good
it the
point
way
of
that
contact.
we did it before, because I'm not the town administrator. It had to be the select board chair,
Okay,
because I had it so that, it was myself, and then my backup person was, my assistant, and that's not gonna fly with the state. So we're gonna try it whichever way they prefer, chairperson or vice chair as well.
okay, so it says therefore, the legislation body of the municipal has entered into and agreed to the requirements and obligations of this grant program, including a commitment to match funds. So that'd be Angie Rowling, select chair, Mike Gardner, select board vice chair, Linda Strappa, administrator assistant. Is there a motion?
to accept
The amended,
the amended, changes to them.
all right, a second,
I'll second.
any more discussion? Bob,
Aye.
Jamie,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Ronnie,
Aye.
Angie, aye. Okay,
Right, I'd like the other one as well. So that it's, so you can accept one or the other.
there's 2 in here?
Yeah, there's one that's just the chair and myself, that's how we ran it, with the previous board, and it was fine.
What's this one right here?
Yeah.
Okay, so the second one is MP 2019 Pownal 00012. And it's the same thing, the legislation body, the municipal has entered into and agreed to requirements and obligations of the grant program, including a commit to match funds. Angie Rollins, select chair, Linda Strappa, assistant, administrator assistant, and then Linda Strappa, administrator assistant. Okay, do I have a motion?
Motion to approve?
Seconded.
Any more discussion? Bob,
Aye.
Jamie,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Ronnie,
Aye.
Angie, aye. Is that good, Linda?
First,
Oh. All right, new position. Bob, would you like to take that?
Well, I did, and I forwarded to the board one of them, and the other one I've got a hard copy. And I think we need to talk about those. That's gonna be one of our items to talk about on the in the personnel, because we want to talk about pay and other things. So it's going to have to, a lot of that's going to have to be there. But you should all have a preliminary job description for a board liaison and for an executive assistant. We can rename those. We can do whatever we want, but we'll talk about it.
Okay. Anything
The
else?
board liaison, we don't have as a hard copy, we don't have that.
Email.
That's correct. I can make a copy.
We should have, yeah, that'd be fine. Just so I
Okay.
don't have to read it on my phone. I read it, but I don't have to read it on my phone.
I know, that's,
Yeah.
I had to read mine on my phone today too, because I had the one download. Okay, town agent, board procedures and grants. Becca?
Hi. Okay, I did unmute myself, I'm sorry. So I put together, we're gonna talk about grants first. I put together a little presentation because I think we need to talk about first, I just wanna make sure we have like a public discussion about what are some of the obstacles to finding grants for the town of Pownal. So that way, once we talk about what those obstacles are, and they are common to rural towns in general, then we can talk about the best path forward to kind of chasing money via grants. And the grants that I'm mostly talking about are not the road grants, not the bridges and the roads. Those are given out in a very different way than some of these other grants that we're talking about. Some of the other infrastructure grants and things like that. So, obstacles to rural grant funding in general. I read a long document called Rural Philanthropy. And in there, they made some very interesting points about chasing money for rural communities. Grant-making behavior and trends are skewed heavily towards support for urban-based and urban-focused groups. And in 2006, now I have an appointment to speak with this organization next week. So I'm going to see if there's updated numbers and statistics on this. But in 2006, the organization Big Sky Institute named what they call philanthropic divide states, which are states with the fewest foundation assets or places where we get money from, grant money, and the states with the fewest grant-making dollars per capita. So the 10 states with the lowest funding dollars and fewest assets for giving grant money includes Vermont. We are one of the 10 most philanthropic disadvantaged states. Giving per capita in these states was $41 per capita as opposed to $156 per capita in the philanthropically advantaged states. Okay, so we already have kind of an obstacle, right? You can read this later, but it talks a lot about rural depopulation and consolidation of schools and how that can often move the money that's available to our smaller communities into the larger, more consolidated areas, okay? Another consideration is that, sorry, so it's not too long, I'm looking through all of my notes. Another thing that often happens in towns like ours is that we often, a small town like this often does not have the capacity, this is a word that's used throughout when we're talking about the ability to receive grant money. We don't have the capacity sometimes to take in the grant funding because we would need the infrastructure to manage that grant funding, if that makes sense. So expressing rural and local need to grant makers that are not familiar with rural Vermont, so we're talking the federal and the more foundational grant programs, can be extremely difficult because of perceptions of rural communities. This is from that paper I'm talking about. Without a strong ability to express rural need to outside funding entities, we often do not appear to qualify for federal national funding. For instance, one rural community gave this example of this problem. This is what they said. We put it together a formal packet for all the folks back in DC, and we described our square mileage covered. It meant nothing to them. They couldn't comprehend who we were, what we did, until we said, We're the size of Massachusetts with one hospital. So often these larger federal grant programs don't understand the needs of rural communities. I think one of the statistics was, this was from about a decade ago, but 65,000 grant programs, only 134 of those were actually tailored to small, sorry, I'm letting someone in the meeting while I'm also managing the meeting at the same time. The BCRC is here. So next, I want to talk about some obstacles and considerations for the town of Pownal in getting grant money. One, we're a philanthropic divide state, as defined before. Also, our median income is well above the state average. So our median income in the town of Pownal is $57,762, compared to the median income of Bennington County as a whole at $50,221, and the Vermont overall median income at $54,267. So having our median income above the median income of both our county and our state as a whole immediately excludes us from many grant opportunities that are geared for communities that have their median income lower than the rest of the state. Okay, that's where grant monies often get pushed towards. However, even though we have a higher median income, we have 24% of Pownal children and 21% of our seniors live below the poverty line. So we have enormous income disparity in Pownal. With our young families and our seniors are disproportionately disadvantaged. And yet we do not qualify for these funding programs because our income disparity hides our ability to qualify on a needs basis. So we have aspects of our community that very much would qualify for assistance, but because of the income disparity, that higher level, that median income, we're automatically out of hand, excluded. I looked at a USDA grant that sent me, and we made nowhere near, based on our income, able to apply for that. The other thing is when we're talking about COVID-specific grants, many of them, I have the statistics here, many of the COVID-specific grants are based on the assumption that we are not receiving our tax revenue and our tax income. So I got the numbers on where we're at this year in our tax collection compared to last year at the exact same time. And last year at end of June, we had collected 37.63% of our estimated tax revenue, okay? And this year, we have collected 46.93% of our estimated tax revenue. So we are actually up, and we're better than last year with our tax collection. So now we're excluded from those kinds of grants. However, we need to revisit that in November, December, January, because we may not see, because we have a once a year billing for tax. We want to look at that again next, at the end of the year, because we may not see the effect of what's going on with everyone in town until that time, and then we can reassess, okay? Lastly, so Pownal, as far as I know, I do know the Planning Commission has done a lot of polls and the town planner, all these amazing statistics that really give you a good view of what the demographics are like here. But I don't know, and maybe someone who's watching this can tell me if this exists somewhere. I don't know that we've ever quantitatively made a list of what every specific need is in this town with each department. That's something, and we have to be able to show the capacity to receive any funding that we might chase in that regard. So, lastly, I learned, and this is according to Colleen Clark, who is the head of corporate funding for the National Office of Meals on Wheels. She's also my sister, so she was very nice to give me a very long talk about grant funding. She says that there's a newer emphasis for grant makers and foundations to really evaluate the possible recipients, not only on their need, but their ability to facilitate and maintain whatever that grant funding created on the back end. Okay, so for instance, if you say I get a grant and I put up a playground, they're going to also want to know what's our 10-year plan for maintaining that playground. We have to show that we have the capacity to maintain it. We have the funding, the whatever. Okay, so with all of these considerations, I don't mean any of them to be a negative Nelly about getting grant money. I just want to be really clear about what I'm seeing. I have some proposed kind of path forward for grant seeking. So first, I believe Pownal needs to create a funding inventory, which is all of the possible needs that would benefit from grant funding in Pownal. This would come from all town departments. So I would go to the wastewater treatment facility, I would ask the select board, I'd ask the listers, I would ask Julie, I'd ask everybody, and I would put a call out to the citizenry as well for their ideas. And I would put everything on a fundable inventory. This, according to Colleen, is one of the best ways to look for grant money, because instead of just looking at every grant that comes by your desk, you know what the specific needs are. You start writing language for them already to describe that need. And then when the grant comes in front of you, you're almost ready to go. You've got language written for it. So I would like to start doing that. Pownal needs to also focus on building capacity. So some ideas, they defined capacity in this document, and that's in here, so you can read it later. But some ideas for building capacity are creating a simple one paragraph or a description that shows our income disparity. So writing an official statement about what our unique challenges are financially here. I also believe that capacity is also about communication to your citizenry. And I would really suggest creating a front-facing social media presence, such as a Facebook page with no comments. You shut the comments on everything, so it's announcement only. That's the kind of place where you can reach out and put up your announcements and then say, please contact me here at this email, That's capacity, the ability to reach your citizenry very quickly. Creating a mission statement in regards to Pownal needs and our hopes to fulfill them. That's something the select board can do, is to create a mission statement. Grantors love to see a mission statement. And also, I believe that there's potential to potentially create just a small group, like a committee, whose sole purpose is to help the primary grant seeker research opportunities based on our predetermined metrics that are determined by the select board. Okay, that's another idea. I'm just throwing ideas out there because we really need to have a more organized way. It's not about just going and finding the money and applying it to something. You have to start developing an entire plan and program of how we're going to manage seeking grant money. Okay, so I also believe that the primary grant seeker should have the ability to search and apply for grants with only a chair and or a vice chair approval for grants that have a short timeline. Sometimes a grant will come across your table and it's due in 24 hours, 48 hours. We cannot have a special meeting every time that happens. So if we're only searching grants that are on our fundable inventory that meet our mission statement, then that's something that's very clear. We can just chase it. Pownal should also have this is my opinion, Pownal should have a very solid plan for funding that also considers out-of-the-box opportunities. All of the eggs should not be put into the grant basket because grants are only one portion of municipal funding. Building our tax base is obviously another prong. And also there's other possibilities such as municipal fundraising, which can be done in collaboration with community organizations for the purpose of helping with specific capital projects. I keep thinking playground when I think that. That's such a perfect example of a community, capital improvement infrastructure that could be done with community partnership. I want to tell you about some specific grant opportunities I have on the docket right now. This one is due on Monday. I'm working on it furiously. I'd like your approval to submit it. It's called the Cultural Facilities Grant. And I met with the Pownal Historical Society and we're building up a plan. The maximum dollar amount is $30,000 and it is for support with the schoolhouse portion of the town hall project. It could potentially give us a reimbursement of up to $30,000. We're going to ask for reimbursement on the lighting, wiring, insulation, and windows. So that's the plan, and I have those estimates coming to me today. Another grant that I'm looking at is the digitization of land records. The application will be released on July 31. Julie is taking a digitization workshop in August. And one thing that Julie's done very well is she set up a fund for this purpose, which is a statutory requirement, but it hadn't been done previously. And she set this up and there's money in it. So I'm working with her to see if we can't get some money to digitize all of our records. I already talked about COVID-19. And then I found some interesting grants. They're smaller, things like animating infrastructure, which it's like an artist grant, commissioning artists to do permanent art installations, perhaps at the new town hall, things like that. And I also been looking at private foundational money, such as a place like Kaboom, which if you find a corporate partner, they may partner with the town to put up a playground. It's a Watch Parks and Rec. It's on there. It's a long shot, but I'm gonna chase it. So that's what I've done so far in a week. And do you have any questions for me about grants?
I've got a few.
Okay.
Going back to the beginning, it was the state per capita was $41 as opposed to $156, and this was one of the reasons. This was the grant dollars per capita for the states that were low, where I believe $41 per capita was Vermont, and $156 was the high end, right?
Yeah. So the $41 per capita was not just Vermont; it was those 10 states that are considered philanthropically disadvantaged.
Okay, as opposed to the higher states. And assuming if that were linear, which I don't know if it is or not, that would put the median would be 98.5, so the mean would be somewhere around there. That means that our per capita giving, or our per capita intake for grant money is less than half, considerably less than half of even the median, even the average.
Yep.
That's.
I'm going to, as I said, I have an appointment to speak with their outreach coordinator with the organization that puts all these statistics together. So I'm going to get updated numbers, and I would love to come back with different numbers. I would love that. But I'm just going to see whatever resources they can hand. The organization is entirely about rural fundraising. That's what it's about.
Okay, and then to me that means we got to be really careful about, as a town, we have to be careful about how we increase our coffers, because what you had said later on in there was one thing we do need to do is increase the town's income. But increasing the town's income, our tax base that is, if we're increasing our tax base, but it's adding to that disparity, then you're going to add to the problem of the 24% of our children being in poverty.
You have to be very creative, because we have some very marginalized communities here and some very disadvantaged communities here. And I've been reading a lot, and I'm going to keep talking to people to see if I can find more resources and ideas around this. But sometimes in a small rural community like this, it appears you have to start thinking very creatively to help those communities within a more affluent town. We're actually a more affluent town, which honestly I was surprised to learn. It's because of that median income issue.
Right, and do we know how we compare in other Vermont towns, or Vermont in average, on the 24% of child poverty and 21%?
Those statistics are partially in the town plan, and I believe the BCRC, they're here, they can speak to that, I'm sure, when they come on, would have all of those statistics, at least regarding Bennington County, and it did compare it to the poverty level of Vermont overall in the town plan. We are above the Vermont average for poverty for both seniors and for children, significantly.
That points to the disparity, right?
Yes, that's what I'm saying, that, that's that disparity which ties our hands for a lot of chasing money, but it can be done. We just have to be extremely smart about how we do it. We have to be ready to go the minute that grant shows up. And I also would like to start looking into this idea of creative municipal fundraising, which again could be for capital projects that are of a community nature that are on town land. That could go into ATV trails, bus trails, playgrounds, a playground on the town park right here, things like that. But I would like to put a call out to everyone in town to send me their ideas, and I'm going to stick them on a big poster board and make a big grid of what our fundable inventory is.
A lot of good information.
Anything else?
I was just struck by how, it's almost like it contradicts itself as it goes through. It's just having the poverty, that many people under the poverty line, and yet being much higher than average on the average income. So the way to increase our tax base, to me, is economic growth, because anything less is going to add to our poverty and add to the disparity.
Well, and that's a conversation that the town needs to have. That's an important conversation. That's an important conversation, and hopefully, what would be great, if the Economic Development Committee starts to meet again, that's a conversation that would be very appropriate for them to have and to start talking about this information. So I think if that's it for grants, I just had a very quick thing about board procedure, and then I'm shutting off my camera. Okay, so board procedure was just, there is a board procedure document. I would like permission to kind of just go into it and look at it. I really want to recommend that the board, if you're going to put something on the agenda, you need to have the information sent in a readable form before you discuss it at a meeting. Certainly before you make a decision on it. So for instance, like the motocross thing, it would have been great if we'd seen the plan and maybe I had been able to speak to the guy prior. So that way, or you hold off and put your decision to the next week. I just talking about being a little more prepared so you're not reinventing the wheel when you're showing up at that table every other week. That was my only thought to start. The lights on the inside.
I agree. I think that's something we should, whether we make it a policy or however we want to do it. But I totally agree with,
Do we have one in place?
There is a policy, and it has, in the policy, it says that you should have the information a week in advance. I think there should be flexibility on that because there are going to be issues that come before you that have an emergency nature to them. But really, I'm going to suggest that you're going to, if you just need to have your information. And if you guys don't have time to read it, you send it to me, you send it to Linda, we read it, we sit there, and then we can make sure you guys are understanding the full scope of what the issue is. So we don't have to go and backtrack it back,
right. I just think, if somebody calls up on Tuesday morning and wants something put on the agenda, an outside person, wants something put on the agenda for that Thursday night, it is pretty unfair to us to have to make a decision on a couple of days.
Right.
It's just, it puts us under the gun sometimes. And I do understand that there are emergency situations out there.
Right. And you should have discretion.
Somebody that's planning something for an event in August or September or whatever, if they put it on that Tuesday of that, do it.
Well, let me give you an example of how this works. So we had the motocross, and then once I spoke to the guys, they were very understanding, like, oh, I guess we don't have our ducks in a row for this. The organizer of the smaller event came back to me, and I was able to talk him through and help him create a document that shows how they're following the COVID regulations, and we were able to put that on the website. So he didn't even need to come before the board at that point because it's such a small gathering. It's not a large gathering ordinance, but we were able to get in front of it so that way if people are concerned, as they are these days, we have, we can just allay people's concerns. We have a plan. We spoke to the organizer, and it's just a nicer way to do business, I think. So.
Right, and I think the times that we're in, I think some of the concern is definitely justified for sure. By the people, especially with the COVID and following the guidelines.
Yeah. That was it. I can look at the board procedure and I can create some suggested edits for the next meeting.
Yeah, and that way we can vote on it and accept it.
And I'll send it to you before so you can read it.
Thank you very much for
All right.
that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So now we can move on to Colleen Clark, because she just walked through the door. Colleen, would you like to come down here so they can see it, or would you like to stay up there?
Whatever's comfortable for you all.
Whatever you prefer.
Huh? It's fine.
Okay, as long as they can hear you.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, you're good. Okay.
Getting close.
I just get back from the DRB meetings, and Charlie LeBlack, an engineer from Pownal Associates, did a presentation with some kind of revised drawings, basically the same. I have them if you'd like to see them. Would you like that?
What are the drawings of? The site plan?
Yes, I'll just point out maybe
Is
a
it-
couple of things.
Do we have them? Are these them?
No,
Right.
Oh,
that's
okay,
the
they were-
building.
That's the building plan.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, site plan.
I'll just point out a couple of what was small sort of revisions that they were to cut costs and for efficiency. The one thing we did do prior to this drawing, we had the parking with a continuous
That's the loop.
loop that came down, and we sort of got rid of that and made all the parking is for the lower levels here, for the upper level is here. We still have about 61 parking places, which should be sufficient. And the elevations were changed slightly so that instead of having retaining walls, we could just do 3 layers of stairs to get up to this level. If one wants to walk up here from the lower level. Primarily, that was what it was about. The state is requiring us to do a retention pond over in this area. And that is, Charlie's still kind of working on that. One good thing is, at first the state was thinking that all this property was together in the original deed. And when they found out it was, the Bartels was separate, now we can have a smaller retention pond.
Right.
Because we have less impervious material for the roads and so forth.
For the stormwater collection.
So where's the retention pond?
It's gonna be in the lower,
Right in this
prior
area.
to the stream.
So it's gonna be down closer to the property line on the bottom?
Yeah, I think. more
Well, I mean,
like-
this is your tennis court, so where are you in relation to the tennis court? Below it or above it? You south of the tennis court or north of it?
Yeah, well, I think we're right in this area. And, so, it's not,
So we're up in here, in this
Yeah.
area here? Cause this is the state right of way line right here,
yeah, well, I'm.
right? No, I understand that. That's why I'm trying to help you.
And, yeah, and this looks so small here, but when you're out there, there's quite a lot of land.
Well, I
And,
mean, I'm pretty familiar
yeah.
with that.
Yeah.
I'm just,
So is it down in the corner there by the house?
No,
No.
this,
the retention pond's gonna be north of the tennis court, this side of the tennis
This
court.
side.
Right.
where the hill kind of grab, when it levels out before it.
Kind of, must be kind of in the old garden.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what the DRB, they wanted to have a set of plans of their own, of the new revised. So, he said we'd get it to them. And then they put us on the agenda for next month so that hopefully they will totally approve it then. And, let's see. The other question they had was, if this building is sold, will it have parking? So that was just a minor little thing. Somebody suggested they tear the building down for parking here. I don't know, we have no idea at this time, I guess, what we're going to do with this building.
Right.
So, okay.
Right before the.
So, and I brought, I don't know whether Harry, forward and got these signed?
No.
Because I brought them, Charlie gave me another set. We need to have an official signature by the select board for these 3 pieces of paper, which are,
It's-
can you read it? I can't read without my glasses. One is for Dorsey, and but we have.
It's the wastewater system portable water permit application. These are required by Department of Natural Resources.
The wastewater system.
Yep. The A&R Form 5 certification for the wastewater potable water supply permits. This is attached to that.
Are there fees involved with these?
Oh, well, that was one question,
Right.
But that should be.
which was,
Fees.
we have
Yeah,
to,
that's why.
Right.
yeah, we're asking to have the fee waived for the sewer permit.
They go
Which-
to the zone street.
I didn't get
Well, yeah, but that's for, these are for state permits, Bob, not
Yeah.
town.
Oh, okay, got it.
Yeah, that's what I wonder, I didn't see that, I wonder, that's the same fees we use. Wow, what are the gods?
Yeah. And once that's signed,
Well, I wanna know what the fees are for these permits and where we're at with the other permits before I sign them.
I didn't see the number on it. That's what
the last
I mean,
select,
we already have a motion that has been passed by this board, that we don't spend any more money until we have all permits in place. I made the motion. March.
we don't have any, I mean, the former board said that the fee for the sewer permit should be waived.
But that's for the town sewer permit.
Yeah.
Right.
that's
Right,
what
this
we're
is,
talking
but this
about.
is the state sewer permit we're talking
No,
about here.
no.
it's an A&R water.
This is no permit, it's
That's
for,
for
but it's for A and R.
Right.
Right,
Right, it's a state. It's a state.
That's not what Charlie said. He said it was for, Darcy.
This one.
no, this is right at the top.
This is
Vermont
Darcy.
State.
That's
Right.
Darcy.
This is
I
Darcy.
don't have a problem with that one if there's no fee.
Yeah.
One for the state, if there's a fee, I wanna know what it is.
Darcy says it would be a. We would
Well,
have,
didn't the previous board already voted that though? Did they Linda to waive fees?
They did waive the,
the
they
zoning.
did.
Okay, yep, you might be right. That's, because that's the only one I asked for.
Right.
You are correct.
We weren't
Yep.
at the state.
Yep.
So they can do this yet.
And as soon as these papers are signed, I can give them back to Charlie and he can go forward.
Part of this is what Ronnie came down to the test, for the flow test for the water. You pump the well.
I just bought a generator.
You bought the generator here, but so they could take and pump water
Charlie's
well.
people, he hired
Right.
people out of Massachusetts.
Right.
It's pretty great.
Yes.
What did they do, Ronnie? Did they do the water quality test? The water quality test?
Our flow check.
The flow check
So-
for
They
A&R.
took quality the first time that we pumped the well, that was state people.
Right.
They took the samples.
The state took water quality?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And then the other part of this,
For quantity.
Right, flow test.
yes. Perk test basically.
I wanna know what the fee is for this. I'm sure there's a fee for A and R. The state doesn't do anything for nothing. There's no fee on here.
No.
There's no fee schedule at all attached to this unless there's more paperwork, but there is absolute, I mean, I don't see one.
Not to try to look that up.
No.
I'd have to take.
I do not see a fee schedule here at all.
He didn't mention it, so
Give them a buzz or. You know,
Where are you at with the other permits? I guess the shorter question is, what permits do you have in place? right
Yeah.
now.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How much is it?
For the A&R,
For public water system construction permit applications, non-transient, non-community systems, 900 per application. Transient, non-community systems, 500 per application. Additional treatment plant fee listed below if applicable. I can send you guys this link.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
So that's your 1400.
Well, it shouldn't be total,
No, not.
I think it was 900 or 500.
right?
Or.
Yes,
Right.
depending upon which fee you needed. Or which
It's just,
system they run.
So do we have a contingency fund for this kind of stuff? I don't know what you guys set up before I became on the board.
it's coming out of the town fund account, is what the permits and stuff. So, thank you.
Municipal office fund? And where are we with that right now?
currently, the last time we looked at it, that was around 30,000.
30,000 left?
30.
Okay, thank you, Linda.
And that means that's taking out the amount that was already allocated
Yeah.
for the 775.
Yeah.
Okay,
The board had retained like 49,000 to be used for miscellaneous and moving expenses, et cetera.
okay,
And
Permitting.
that is the amount, that is the money that we've been sending from that 49 contingency.
okay,
The rest of it strictly designated to the bond.
all right. So can I entertain a motion,
Well,
or are you,
I'm waiting to see what she has in place for permits.
okay, I'm sorry.
Okay, this is the list. And, so we have, you want me to read them off?
Well, yeah, I wanna know which permits you actually have in place right now
Okay.
on today's date, whatever it is.
We have, the schoolhouse was tested for hazardous swings and none was found. That was in 2018. And well samples were taken and, we did fine with that. That was over a year ago. We're waiting for the DRB.
The well samples were taken by the state?
Yeah, she happened to be down here.
Okay.
And so it worked out really well. She also did one for PSOA.
Mhm.
Okay.
Perfect.
Then we have the Pownal. I don't know. Do we have our building permit from you?
No, because the DRB hasn't.
Okay,
Right,
so
that's
we're
all part of
waiting
the
on
DRB.
that.
Right, that's all part of them.
Okay, so we don't receive the highway permit for excess weight until we need it. And we received the stamp plans from Preferred Buildings Systems. We have the construction permit. Well, that's been submitted to Division of Fire and Safety. We don't have that yet. We're still dealing with that. We received the permit from the Vermont Trans State Highway right of way. Pardon? And then we have notify when the building is moved, and not until near that time, we notify the Vermont Department of Environmental Health. And we just have to notify them. We don't really need a permit. And then the Vermont Environmental Conservation Water and Sewer permit is in the process by Gutlow Associates. And that's what Charlie's been dealing with. Yeah, water and sewer. And also they're dealing with the Vermont stormwater permit. And that should be we should be getting that pretty soon too, I hope. And then we need a propane tank permit before the installer installs a propane tank, but we don't need that yet either. So right now, but we're waiting for primarily the water and sewer permit and the stormwater permit.
You're waiting for a permit from the state that says you can go ahead and do the project.
Oh, that, yeah.
That's the most important one as far as I'm concerned. And we're
Right.
putting the cart before the horse by signing a wastewater and this permit, we don't need it, we don't have a building yet. Or a permit for a building.
Well, hopefully we'll
If
have.
we don't, this is for wastewater system and potable water. We don't have a building to put wastewater or potable water in. So I think it's crazy to sign that and spend $900 on that right now when we don't even know if the state is gonna allow us to put a building there.
Gary, I don't know if we need that permit before we get the permit for the construction permit from the state. Honestly, I'm not sure.
That I don't know without asking Gerald, but.
Yeah,
Unless I'm missing
I think
something.
to Mike, I think what you're saying, Mike, and I think I agree, is that, to pay $900 for a permit that it is risking the 900, because if we don't get the state permit.
We don't
then
have a
spend
building to put
900
that
for
in.
nothing. We spend 900 for nothing.
Right.
So that there is a sequence here. What I would like to see, hopefully it's easy to come up with, is a full list of all the permits needed, whether or not they're state, local,
Right.
town.
yeah.
Mhm.
And when do we need it, and what's the current status?
Right, the timeline for when we need them.
We can copy this.
Okay.
There's no timeline on that whatsoever.
This is just.
Well, but then
time.
it'd be a good start.
It
would be something
in a
to go-
spreadsheet,
right.
and I could fill it in as we
So I agree with Mike that we should wait on the $900 until we have the permit.
Or even the 500. I mean, we don't know. We're not even totally positive which one we need without me reading which one
I agree with you.
Oh, yeah.
But can we move on with Darcy, since we were gonna wait, or should we also wait on that?
Well, I think first we need to vote as a board if we're going to waive the fee for the town. And I don't have a problem moving forward with the town permit because we're not spending any money.
Okay,
You know, I have a problem spending money
that's not sure.
that's not a sure thing.
I agree.
So tonight we can vote to waive the
The town
fees.
sewer fee.
Well, we can't do that until we get a sewer commission, right?
The select board can vote to waive that fee though, right?
As a sewer commission, I thought.
This is what it is.
We are the same.
Well, I thought we had to do a formal sewer commission meeting. That's what I
Well,
was.
you're gonna approve the application formally as a sewer commission, the selectmen do the fees.
We can vote to waive the fees.
Right.
But then
Then we have-
as the sewer commission, we will have to vote to
accept
approve
it.
or disapprove.
All right, well, that's fine.
I make a motion that the select board waive the town sewer connection fee for the proposed new town office.
And what is
Are
the
there
fee
any
of
other-
that?
I'm sorry.
What is the fee amount of that?
That I don't know, that's not my thing.
I think it was $500.
Do you know what that?
I'm guessing.
Without seeing the allocation.
Okay,
Right, you have to see whatever,
okay. I was just
doesn't it go
curious.
in number of user units or something?
Right, I have that here somewhere, but I don't have time to figure that
It's the number of gallons going
Right.
plus.
Right.
out. Okay, I was just wondering about her figure. Okay, so I have a motion on the table, a second.
I'll second.
Any other discussion? Bob, Jamie,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Ronnie?
I was under the impression that EUs, whatever, they figure that out later. Right now, I think all you're looking for in about is a permit to open up.
Right,
Connection fee.
The EUs, that's not forgiven for anybody.
Right,
Fire departments, rescue squad, everybody pays, this place pays the EU,
right.
everybody.
User.
It's hooked on.
yeah,
And so we're not waiving no fees there, that's all.
okay,
We're waiving maybe a fee
Connection.
of the connection.
right,
Right, I agree, Ryan. That's what I want my motion to be. We're waiving the connection fee, not the user.
right.
Can't.
Right, because everybody else pays. Okay, yes. Great, good point, Ryan. Yes.
Yes, okay,
I'll say so everybody
you're saying it's the connection fee only that we're waiving.
And I'll amend that motion if I have to, that's fine.
You move for the select board to waive the sewer connection fee for the town office building.
Perfect.
Perfect,
Permitting connection.
all right. Aye, the ayes have it. Okay,
Angie, can I just interject for 1 second? Catherine has given us the information for the permit checklist, all of his contact info, so I'm gonna give that to the board at the end of the meeting, so you guys can decide if someone wants to contact him regarding water permits and all of that.
thank you.
Yep.
Was there anything else that we had to do for this?
Other than your signature.
You didn't have to make a motion for me to sign it.
No, that's what we just,
Okay,
I believe it's only one signature. I don't think it needs a little more for that one.
Oh, this is select board too.
That's why I.
Landowner.
You
you
got
want it, is that what you want?
Yeah.
Anything else, Colleen?
Not, okay, hopefully we'll have the stormwater permit by next month. For the information so we can get it. Really, that's about it, and hopefully we'll have the building permit by then. And that's it. Okay.
Permit specialist.
Did I miss anything?
No, just person to get a hold of their.
You want this back? Didn't you?
Oh, if they're fine, yeah.
They're not, no, they're not signed.
Oh,
Have to wait till we get all our ducks in a row here.
okay, so we're not gonna sign this one, but we're signing the other,
Yep.
the one for the wastewater
For the town.
Yeah, the sewer plant.
and this takes about a month. That's what Charlie said. You have that one. Okay.
So we all set?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, nobody else has questions.
Does anybody have any questions, Colleen?
I'm good.
Okay.
Good.
Hey, thank you, Colleen, for coming in.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Paul.
Okay, so we can move on to new business. Catherine Bears, BCRC, hope I'm saying that right, Briars?
It's Briars like the ice cream.
Oh, very good, thank you.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Hello, nice to see you guys. I'm gonna only have my camera on right now, and then I'm gonna switch it off because my intention is to link you guys into a PowerPoint that I'm gonna run you through. And I realize now, looking at your setup, some of you look far away from the computer, so you may not be able to see it in great detail, but we are going to post this on our BCRC website for everybody to be able to take a look at after.
Bless you.
And I did provide that regional permit specialist, and the only thing I wanted to add about it is when you know that it's somebody's full-time job just to help people navigate the permitting process in the state of Vermont, it lets you know just how intensive the permitting process is. That is his full-time job. So you give him a call and he should be able to help you figure everything out that you need there. So now my intention is to turn off my camera and start this PowerPoint. But okay, I thought this might happen. Linda, I might need you to enable participant screen sharing. which if you click on the screen share button at the bottom, it should give you an option to enable. Yep.
I'm coming.
Okay.
It says one participant can share at a time. I'm going to do multiple participants, and hopefully that turns it on for you.
It should. Let's see. Yep, perfect.
Great.
So here we go. I believe this is about to work, but bear with me in case it's not. Are you guys currently looking at a screen that says trolley line path scoping study?
Yes,
Yes.
we are.
Yep.
Perfect. Okay. Great. Well, thanks for having me, Pownal Select Board. I appreciate it. This is the public outreach component of the scoping study that BCRC is working on, and COVID has made this, as it has many other things, difficult to share with the public. So I appreciate you guys giving us your platform to reach out to the Pownal community in particular. So I'm Kat Bryers. I'm a regional planner with the Bennington County Regional Commission. Everybody knows us mostly as the BCRC, and in case you're not familiar, the Bennington County Regional Commission, BCRC, is a regional planning organization. We serve our 17 member municipalities, of which Pownal is one. We provide technical planning assistance to our member towns. So that includes municipal planning, transportation planning, economic development, emergency, solid waste, natural resource assessments, a lot of the stuff. So even some of the stuff that you're currently working with, for example, navigating the permitting process, we love to help our member communities with that. So never hesitate to reach out. Today, though, I'm going to talk specifically about this scoping study that BCRC is currently doing. Myself and our transportation planner, Mark Anders, who is also on the line. And so when we hopefully get through this quickly and hopefully you guys have some comments or questions, and he'll help jump in on that. But basically what is this project? It's a study to assess the feasibility of developing a shared use path, also commonly known as a bike path, that would be an alternative transportation route along the Route 7 corridor as it goes from Bennington, Vermont through Pownal and down to Williamstown, Massachusetts. So I'm going to talk about the context for the study, a little bit of the history of the trolley line, which if you guys can see my mouse, I'm using this as a pointer. On the left hand of the screen, you'll see this throughout the presentation. This is a map of the historic trolley line that used to run from Bennington, again, through Pownal Center and Pownal to the south, down to Williamstown, Massachusetts. We're going to look at some history of that and this possibility of developing a multi-use path along the historic trolley line, again, to provide a transportation alternative to Route 7. We're going to share what some of the impacts that we foresee the pathway having if it were to be built, what we've found so far when we investigated what the current state of the trolley line is, and what all we'll be looking at to develop a final report by the end of the year. And but as a sneak peek, I can tell you this is our study area here, as I've stated, starting in Bennington, Vermont, in the north, going south through Pownal Center, through Pownal, and along the rail line into Williamstown. If built, a path along this route or something similar would create 12 miles of shared use path. Again, I use several terms: multi-use path, shared use path, bike path, kind of interchangeably. And it would connect the 4 village centers, 2 of which, as I've stated, are in Pownal. What is a scoping study? This is the trolley line scoping study. A scoping study is funded by the Vermont Agency of Transportation. And what they do, and we received funding through the BCRC to undertake this study, what they do is they identify a transportation problem and then assess the viability of addressing that problem through a possible solution. So what's the problem that we're looking at? Route 7, as it goes from, again, Bennington to Williamstown. is not complete streets compliant. What is complete streets? Complete streets is a policy that roadways should not only accommodate motor vehicles, but should also accommodate pedestrians and cyclists safely. And when you look at some of these images of what Route 7 looks like, or if you travel it every day like I do, I live in southern Bennington and I drive every day to drop my son off at the daycare center in Pownal Center, so I travel this every day. You can see at a glance that the conditions of the roadway are not inviting to a pedestrian or a cyclist. These shoulders through much of the area are quite narrow. There are also a lot of these cliff-like situations, so if you had to jump out of a car's way along this roadway, who knows exactly where you would stop rolling. Even as you move south, the shoulders along Route 7 do get larger, but the volume of traffic, the velocity of traffic, and the type of traffic, these really large vehicles, like you see the example here, it's so great that really developing some safe route for pedestrians and cyclists on Route 7 would be very hard to accomplish without risking, really a fatality. If a truck of this size had a collision with a pedestrian or a cyclist, it would be very hard to believe that a fatality wouldn't result from that. So that's what the scoping study is looking at. And when we start to think about how to solve this transportation problem, as I was just discussing, finding a way to accommodate cyclists and pedestrians directly on Route 7 poses some huge challenges. This is the type of challenge that a regional transportation planner like ours, Mark Anders, it keeps him awake at night trying to figure out how to meet state policy to accommodate varied users along these main transportation routes, which is what Route 7 is. How do we do that and do it safely? And he was pretty stumped by it until in 2016, he had this notion when he learned about the historic trolley line. And I can't see you guys very well to ask you if anybody's familiar with the historic trolley line. Maybe?
I am, yeah, for sure.
Very cool, very cool. Yeah, it's interesting. When you know that it's there, you see it everywhere. But if you didn't know it was there, it's also very hard to miss. Or you see things and you kind of always wonder, what is that? And it's the trolley line. So now that is what helped inspire this idea, learning about this established pathway from Bennington through Pownal down to Williamstown. It emerged this idea to do this study to see, hey, could that historic alignment for the trolley bed somehow get turned into this alternative route that would be safe for bicyclists and pedestrians to use. One thing I wanted to mention before going into more details on the project and the history is to point out, because I imagine that some people would react very quickly to this proposal that, a bike path could be a viable transportation alternative along Route 7. Are people really going to hop off their cars and instead, say ride a bike for their regular day-to-day commuting? And I think that several years ago, the conversation would have stopped there, but in recent years, there's been developments that have actually made this much more of a possibility today, and especially into the future, than it would have been years ago. And the biggest thing to point out is the booming popularity of electronic bicycles, also known as e-bikes, which make regular commuting over mid to even larger distances, and in an area that's as hilly as ours is in southern Vermont, they actually take that and make it possible. The lowest class of e-bikes, which is what would be allowed on a path like the one that we're going to consider here, goes up to 20 miles an hour, provides an electric assist, and as I said, goes up to 20 miles an hour. And it makes a big difference. Mark Anders, our transportation planner, he currently is dating somebody down in North Adams and regularly bikes down there, and it takes him about an hour to get from western Bennington to North Adams. If you make it not all the way down to North Adams, but instead say to Pownal to Bennington, you're cutting down the time to have it maybe only be 20 minutes on a bike path like this one, and that starts to sound much more comparable to somebody's commute. So I wanted to point that out because we're going to talk about this in terms of it being a real transportation alternative, and that can be a real stumbling block to somebody trying to imagine what that would look like. There's many other impacts, a lot of which could potentially be positive, but I'm going to come back to it in a second after covering some other points. Some logistics of the project. Again, I'm one of the main contacts as the project manager, but also Mark Anders, our transportation planner at BCRC, working on this. We also are developing a steering committee with participants from Bennington, Pownal, and Williamstown to weigh in on the project as it's developed. It's going to culminate in a scoping study report to be finished by the end of this year. Of course, the pandemic has put a lot of projects off course, but we're still aiming to have this completed by the end of the year. So we're still seeking members to join that committee. We actually haven't, we put out an initial call and didn't get a good response from Pownal, so we're hoping that this presentation will help put it on more people's radars. In particular, we'd love to hear from folks that own a local business or employ people that do commute, in this area or otherwise spend a lot of time in the area that would provide some good insight and have some extra time and their free time to contribute to this project. The schedule, we're about halfway through the tasks that we have to do. These are the local concerns meetings. We're here tonight in Pownal. Monday we'll be in Bennington, and we'll have a future presentation in Williamstown. And again, we're going to really buckle down to develop the scoping report and a final presentation this fall and into the early winter with the support of the steering committee. So another note on the history of the trolley. Glad to hear that at least some of you are familiar with it. We, as BCRC, became aware of it, really specifically Mark Andrews, who's the mind behind this whole proposal to undertake this study, when Joe Hall, Bennington local historian, gave a presentation on the history of the trolleys back in 2016. If you guys are interested, or anybody listening is interested, this link to the video is free, is online. Really interesting, some great photos and anecdotes from Joe. It's really beautiful to see a lot of these examples like we have here of what the trolley bed looked like when it was active, and then shots of what it looks like today. Just beautiful, really fun part of doing this scoping study. So Joe provides a much deeper history of the trolley line, but for the purposes of this presentation, we'll summarize it as, the Berkshire Street Railway provided the trolley service running from Bennington to Williamstown from 1907 to 1929, so roughly 22 years. The network itself was actually much larger. It spanned from New York to Connecticut, over 170 miles. But obviously, for the purpose of this study, we're looking at this section from Bennington through Pownal to Williamstown. And just because we're in Pownal, we might as well highlight some of the history of the trolley line in Pownal while we're here. This is obviously Pownal Center. You can see the church, although it no longer has this, I think that's the bell tower, but we have Center Street here, and you can see the trolley line running here where today Route 7 goes through Pownal Center. This, I think you guys are maybe looking at now in the Pownal town clerk's office. This is hanging up somewhere in there that notes that Pownal Center is the highest elevation point along the historical trolley line. And moving south, this is along Church Street in Pownal. And just the other day, you can see the trolley line here. I went down the other day and have a nice shot later in the presentation where you can see, current Church Street also with this house in it. There's been interest in developing a path like this in the past. Back in 2003, Williams College students reached out and developed a scoping study very similar to the type of study that we're doing, just to assess high-level, feasibility. And they found a couple of different alternatives that might work, and they found, importantly, a lot of support in Pownal for a proposal like this. Another group that this would impact that has supported the idea is the Western New England Greenway bike route, which identifies the point where we are in southwestern Vermont as kind of a weak point in their bike route that people do every year from New York City to Montreal, Canada. coming back to some of the reasons for why this pathway could be successful. Again, electronic bikes make it a great possibility as a viable transportation route. Not only, is bicycling a popular thing in urban areas, sometimes there's a perception of that, but increasingly, and again with the advent of e-bikes, there's rural use of these is also really successful. The other impacts that a pathway of this would have, again, a 12-mile pathway linking four historic village areas, it has huge potential for economic development to draw people, visitors, residents also to the historical settlements of the area. Tourism, which we all know is a huge aspect of Vermont's economy generally. Also public health to help address some of the chronic disease that remains prevalent in our local population, and inherent value in preserving the trolley line for those interested in historic preservation. Really interesting is when you step outside of just our project area, which is in this map to the right. You can see our project area from Bennington to Williamstown in red. There are actually already completed, such as the Ashawiltacook Rail Trail, bike trail down linking Adams to Lanesboro. There's existing and planned bike paths that, if this type of a path were to be completed in our study area, would actually create a continuous pathway from North Bennington to Pittsfield, Massachusetts. That would be 45 miles, which is getting to that critical mass where something is not only kind of complementing other attractions to the area, but really becomes a huge regional or even a national draw to bring people to the area, either to spend their money temporarily as tourists, but also ideally to actually draw residents, families, and taxpayers to our communities. Here's some examples of successful projects that have gone off of this model to attract people to come. Not only do you attract families and provide a good local quality of life and tourism, but businesses either directly affiliated with something like this type of an amenity can pop up, but also other ones as well. When you have new revitalized activity in your village centers, it opens new doors for all types of businesses to open up and to thrive. It's not an entirely rosy picture. There are concerns inherent in any major infrastructure project like this, and this is just as much what we are looking at and will be evaluating as part of the scoping study report. So obviously the first is environmental impacts. Wherever a path like this might end up, we have to look very closely at the environmental resources that are currently there and how to mitigate impacts on them. Cost of developing a project this large is obviously hugely significant, and future maintenance, Linda made that point generally about the municipality. Before any of these projects to be funded, you really have to have a very solid proposal for how you're going to be maintaining them into the future. And always with these types of open space projects, concerns arise about possible public nuisance impacts. One thing that I've been heartened by is taking a local example, the Ashawiltacook Rail Trail. The Berkshire Regional Planning Commission down there did a survey of land abutters directly to the trail, as well as the police commissioners, and to see if the perception that there would be new nuisances that would arise from the project being developed, if that actually happened, and they found no impact. Of course, that's just one study, but it is interesting that it's so close to where we are. That's something, though, that we're very much going to be evaluating as we move into the next step of the project, which is actually drafting the report. So what have we done to date? We've done a whole lot of field work, which, as you can see, has involved getting out and actually walking the trail, the old trolley line bed, to see what condition it is in today, and how feasible it would be to shared use path. Images like this one really show, that obviously it's beautiful. This is a portion between Route 346 and Route 7 in Pownal. Really, really beautiful blasted through the rocks there. So we'll walk through, try to do this really quickly in Bennington. As you walk down, you see a lot of this historic infrastructure. This is an old bridge that went over the Walloon-Sac. You see a lot of evidence of that old infrastructure. Close to Bennington, you actually have portions of the trolley line. This is it here coming out on what's South Stream Road heading down into Pownal, and the trolley line here at One World Conservation Center. Those are actually, public recreation and natural areas where folks walk on the trolley line every day. But as you move south, you have much more of the trolley line, if it is still intact, which is a good example of it here. It's still in Bennington, east of the sheriff's station. You can see it's beautiful, intact, highly visible, but this is on private property, which much of the trolley line is, because it was dissolved. We don't know exactly when, we're looking into it, but it was dissolved, and the right-of-way was gifted to abutting landowners. So right-of-way for the trolley bed would be a massive barrier to developing a path like this at some point. But it is fun to walk it and look at it there. As we keep going south, you can see this is Route 7 coming out of central Bennington. And if you look at the trolley line, just runs right parallel with it, and somebody else has had the idea to get bikes on this trail before we did. Another example of something that happens is it's one or two parts of the trolley bed where it was actually great infrastructure, and so it was converted into a roadway, such as Peaks Pine Road. And again, here's some additional infrastructure that you'll see going along. This is a cattle pass that you'll see a lot of. Continuing down, we get into Pownal Center. Everybody, should recognize this. This is one of the powerhouses that provided the electricity for the trolley line right in Pownal Center. As you move down, we've got another one of these giant cattle passes. This is just east of Route 7. So you actually see one of these giant semi-trucks that's traveling north on Route 7 as we're checking this out. At some point, the historical alignment crosses over what is today Route 7, so this is now on the west side. Picture similar to what I showed you earlier. This is Route 7 up here, and it's really stunning. It's very beautiful. The trolley bed is actually vaulted up into the air, and when there aren't trees, when there aren't leaves on the trees, the views out west over the Hoosic River Valley are really stunning. Continuing down, most people too would recognize off of Route 346. This is another one of the cattle passes as the trolley route comes down and eventually merges with 346 as it comes into Pownal. And here's that old photo I saw you once the trolley line came down and merged with what is today 346. It also continued down Church Street in Pownal, as you've seen. Here's that house today from that picture. And from there, the historic trolley alignment really goes onto what's today the railroad track. But I did want to point out that's really why this last portion here is in purple, because that's essentially what it has become, is the railroad right of way. But there is some possibility with continuing to use the historic trolley alignment here, because you can see that historically there were actually two rail lines. Today, the rail company only uses one of them, but you can see also down in Williamstown, the space still exists for the additional rail line. And so actually the William College study, that's one of the proposals that the students put out, would be to do a rail with trail pathway. So over viability, what we're finding so far is that the answer is sure, this is a possibility. This could happen. There's a lot of details that would have to get figured out, and really it would end up just falling to the communities that it impacts. If it's something that the communities get excited about and want to see developed, and are willing to put in the time and the many years it would take to develop something like this, it seems like it could happen and could help improve safety for bikers and walkers moving along the Route 7 corridor. But there's still a lot of stuff that we're going to look at as we prepare the final report. Impacts on natural and cultural resources. Again, as I mentioned, huge right-of-way impacts to so much of the trolley line has reverted to private ownership. Significant costs, but a lot of funding sources, possible funding sources that could be looked at. Even what type of path, if this were to become a path, what's the right type of path for this area, paved versus natural materials. Several roadway and waterway crossings that are engineering feats to figure out how to design those safely, and ultimately just what would a route for a path like this look like? Would it be largely on the trolley line? Where would it make more sense to vary from the trolley line? So for the next steps, we're going to continue to conclude our existing conditions assessment and then move very quickly into evaluating some alternatives for what our suggested pathway would be if this were ever to be, something that were developed. We will be doing a final public presentation based on that analysis and, of course, developing the final scoping report before the end of the year with the support of the steering committee. And that's it.
Well, thank you. That was a really good presentation. But a couple of questions is, I think you said at the beginning you would send us that the presentation itself.
Yes.
Okay, that'd be great. I think if you just sent that to the town, they'll distribute it.
Yeah, I can send it to Linda.
Okay, that's perfect. And then also, as far as if this comes to fruition, is the thought that the state would run it or that the Bennington County would run it? I mean, how would it be owned and operated?
So those are the types of questions that we have yet to really delve into as part of the scoping report. But I don't know, Mark, since you have more experience doing these projects, maybe you have some more initial thoughts.
Sure, I think it would be very likely that it would be a state-owned and maintained path. And that's what is done down in Massachusetts with the Ashwaubenon Rail Trail. It's owned and maintained by the state, just because it's such a big project and because it would cross several different towns. That's really the most realistic.
Have you guys approached the state yet as far as that question?
We haven't. I mean, they gave us the funding to do the scoping study, so they're aware of the project. But no, we haven't. We haven't talked to them. Well, that'll be the kind of the next step. Once we'll submit the report to the state, and they will either approve it or they'll say that it needs to work. But hopefully, that'll be the kind of the beginning of the conversation about that.
Any other questions? Thank you so much. Very interesting. Hopefully we'll be able to move forward with this.
Great, wonderful. Thanks for giving us your time. I know you have a lot of things today, so we appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Okay. Next on the agenda is approval of computer cameras and microphone purchases for 8 workstations. Linda, what was that total again? I don't have that email from me.
$400.
$40 per station, correct?
No, 400 total.
Oh, $400 total.
400 total for 8 workstations,
Oh,
camera.
Oh, that's right. It was $50 each for.
Yep,
Yep.
camera and check supervisors, the money for
Okay. And that's going to improve considerably, right?
considerably, especially through these times.
The
Almost, I think every single workstation either does not have a camera, a mic, or speakers. It's very difficult to do webinars. There was no Zoom.
So on the agenda, it says camera and mic, but I assume that means camera, mic, and speaker.
It says camera and mic.
So I assume that means we already have the speakers or they're included in the mic or something.
Something like that. I mean, it can't be that much.
And does that include the installation as well, or is that opposite?
Installation.
included, okay.
Well, installation is just a USB, right? Just
Yeah.
plug it in.
I think it's kind of something like yours on your laptop.
That's what I was,
Okay. Any more discussion? I entertain a motion.
motion to approve camera and mic purchase for 8 workstation for $400,
Second,
approximately $400.
Second.
any more discussion? Bob,
Aye.
Jamie,
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Lonnie?
Aye.
Angie, aye. Okay, so now we can go into public comments via Zoom.
I have one thing under public comment. I'd like to acknowledge our listers, Wendy, Jordan Bizon, and Jody Morrison for successfully lodging the 2020 grand list, probably in record time. I got an email from them on the 9th of July. They said they were done
Awesome.
with their grand list. So even shorthanded, only having 2 of them to do the work, definitely a fantastic job by those 2.
Thank you so
for sure.
much.
Oh, a fantastic job, and their usual.
Yeah.
Thank you,
I
Wendy.
agree.
And Jody. All right, public comment, there is a household hazard waste collection on Saturday, August 8th from 9 to 1 p.m. at the Mount Anthony Middle School. And it's for Arlington, Bennington, Dorset, Glastonbury, Manchester, Pownal, Rupert, Sandgate, Searsburg, Shaftesbury, Stamford, Sunderland, and Woodford. And whatever you bring, you can bring any substance with labels that say toxic, corrosive, poison, flammable, danger, warning, caution, use in open environment. Examples include antifreeze, turpentine, stains, varnish, carburetor cleaner, drain cleaner, oven cleaner, pet strips, thinner, solvents, fertilizer, weed, and feed only. Stuff like that. Drywall sealer, fire extinguisher, all that stuff you can bring, but whatever you bring it in, it has to stay. You cannot return any container that you bring. Okay?
Is that flyer, where's that flyer available?
Is this available? Is it-
Post on our website. We'll take
Okay.
care of it around stores.
For more information, you can contact Michael Batcher at mbatcher@bcrcbt.org or 802-442-0713 extension 2.
So it's August 8th, where are they?
Wednesday.
Up
Also,
from
see
9 to 1.
Yep,
at
see
the middle
Tom
school.
Schuey with any questions.
At the middle school.
New place this year.
And that will be on our website, correct?
It's on there.
Thank you, Linda. All right, so we can open up to any public comments. Is there anybody in the waiting room?
There isn't. I already asked. It's Fred Miller who's just in the room and he has no comment.
Okay. So then can I entertain the motion to go into executive session? And it's for contractual.
So move.
Second,
I'll second it.
Bob,
Aye.
Aye.
Jamie, Mike,
Aye.
Aye.
Angie, aye.
Remind everyone that you're going to be remaining in Zoom.
The board will be taking action in public session after the executive, which will be done via Zoom conference. The meeting will be muted during the executive session and unmuted when the board comes back out into public session. Thank you.
Aye.
Aye.
Angie, aye. Okay. Are we on?
You're on.
All right, we came out of executive session. We are not making any decisions right now. So I need a motion to go back into executive session for personnel.
Motion, we go into executive session for personnel.
For 3 personnel.
For three
For three
personnel.
personnel issues, yes.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Bob,
Aye.
Jamie,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Ronnie? Angie, aye. So
And we'll be muting and coming back.
We'll be coming back, yes.
You're unmuted. You are unmuted. This is our last action, correct?
We're back in regular session. Okay, entertain a motion, please.
Make a motion to approve our town attorney, Bob Fisher, to take actions on our behalf without a board vote regarding the litigation between the LLC, Pownal Citizens for Safer Roads, and the town of Pownal.
And a
Second.
second. Okay, any discussion? Bob,
Aye.
Jamie,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Ronnie.
Aye.
Angie, aye. Guys have it.
I make a motion we adjourn.
Second. Any other discussion? Bob,
Aye.
Jamie,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
aye. Guys have it. Thank you very much,
What was
everybody.
that? Okay. Well, you're done.